Okay, for this lesson, we will be talking about the center of gravity and stability. Okay, so center of gravity is simply where an imaginary point where the entire weight of the object appears to act. Okay, so the whole weight of the object will be acting from that single point. Okay, so if it is a regular object, the center of gravity will simply be the center, the geometric center of the object. So as you can see over here, we have a rectangular, it could be three-dimensional, but if it's two-dimensional, we will just draw the bisectors, and where it intersects will be the center of gravity. All right, so for a circle, it will be the center of gravity of that circle. And for a triangle, okay, you can draw from the vertices. So for example, here from one vertex to the middle of the opposite side, right? And you do that for at least two lines, okay, where the lines intersect, there the center of gravity will be. Okay, what about irregular shaped objects? Well, one rough approximate way of doing it would be to just put a vertical line and a horizontal line, and where the mass seems to be equally distributed, in this case above and below, right, your horizontal line will sort of divide that lamina into two, where the mass above and below is approximately the same, and you do the same for the left and right. So on the left and on the right, okay, the amount of mass is approximately the same. Okay, you can find the center of gravity in a very approximate way, that way. But the way to do it in the lab would be to do this. All right, this is the procedure for the experiment. Okay, when we have lamina, which is a thin sheet of material, all right, such as a card. Let me reduce the thickness. Okay, so we can pierce a hole, right, on the card, and we hang the lamina from a pin. Okay, hang a plumb line from that same pin. Okay, so a plumb line is basically a vertical line because of this bob at the end, right? The bob will weigh down that line such that it will always be pointing towards the center of the earth. So it will always be vertical, all right? So we need a vertical line because the center of gravity will always be below the pivot, right? So the pivot in this case, of course, is where the pin is, right? Where the pin is, that will be the pivot, and the center of gravity will always be below the pivot. Okay, I will explain a little more later. So you draw a straight line down that lamina, okay, where the plumb line is, right? And you repeat the steps for two more points such that you have three lines, and where the three lines intersect, that is where your center of gravity is going to be, right? So in this case, your center of gravity will be over here. And if you were to take this lamina and balance it on your finger, right, the whole weight of that lamina will be acting from that single point of the intersection, which is the center of gravity of the object. All right, some precautions here. Make sure that the lamina is free to swing. Ensure that the holes made are small so that not too much lamina is removed. Okay, so why is it that you can determine the center of gravity by this method? All right, so when we displace, okay, remember that the center of gravity is where the whole weight of the object appears to act. So when I displace it slightly, all right, the weight will be acting a distance from the pivot, right, which is where the pin is. So if I were to draw a line here, a vertical line, and a horizontal line from the center of gravity. Okay, this will make a perpendicular distance. So the perpendicular distance, okay, because the line of action of the force is vertical, the line of action of the force, which is the weight, right, is vertical, and the pin is directly above here, this point, right? So the perpendicular distance will be d, and therefore it will cause a anti-clockwise moment, which is the weight multiplied by the perpendicular distance d. And this will cause it to turn back anti-clockwise back to its original position, where the CG is directly below the pivot. Okay, so when the CG is directly below the pivot, the weight will not cause a turning moment because the perpendicular distance is 0. So as I've just said, if displaced, there will be a turning effect or moment causing it to turn until the CG is below the pivot. All right, so it will always turn until, okay, it will always turn until the moment is 0. So you continue to swing to and fro until the moment or the turning effect is 0, where finally the CG is directly below the pivot. Okay, so that's how it works for an irregular shaped laminar. All right, so moving on, we are talking about stability here. So what is stability? It's the measure of an object's ability to return to its original position. All right, so let's take a cuboid. All right, we are looking at the cross section of a cuboid here. So when we tilt the cuboid slightly, all right, actually I should use the second diagram. All right, the second diagram is where the object has been tilted slightly. Now, if you look at the line of the center of gravity, right over here, okay, this is where the vertical line going through the center of gravity, okay, which the weight of the object, the entire weight of the object acts from. This line is within the base of this cuboid. And when the line of action of this force is within the base of this cuboid, it will have a turning moment because of this perpendicular distance over here, right? There will be a turning moment, there will be a moment, anti-clockwise moment, causing it to go back, to turn back to its original position. Okay, so there will be a moment causing it to turn back to its original position. So this object is actually stable, right? It's stable because it will return to its original position. Now, this is for the second diagram, which I was trying to tell you. It's the second diagram. Now, if we continue turning it further, right? This is where we look at the first position here. The first position, the line of the center of gravity, the vertical line through the center of gravity is now at the pivot. It's acting at a pivot. So at this point where it's acting at a pivot, okay, the vertex of this cuboid being the pivot, it will neither turn clockwise nor anti-clockwise, okay? But beyond that, when it goes to this third position, the line of the vertical line through the center of gravity is now outside of the base, right? It's now outside of the base, and okay, the line is slightly tilted. Let me redraw that. Okay, so the line of the vertical line through the center of gravity is now acting outside of the base, right? So then there will be a perpendicular distance over here. They will cause it to turn clockwise, right? They will cause it to turn clockwise and topple. causing the cuboid to topple. So it will no longer turn back to its original position, but because the vertical line through the CG has gone beyond the base, it will turn clockwise and it will topple. Okay, so if the vertical line through the center of gravity is outside of the base, it will topple. If it is within the base, it will turn back to its original position. So the position of the cuboid does matter, because if you place it on its side with the smaller area, all right, it's actually less stable than if you were to place it on the side with the larger area. That is because when we tilt this cuboid slightly, right, the vertical line through the center of gravity will actually be outside of the base more easily than if it were placed with the larger area on the floor. So if you were to tilt this cuboid when it is in this position, all right, it is more difficult for it to turn such that it will topple. All right, so if you were to turn this, okay, let me try and highlight this cuboid. No, I can't. I need to just highlight that cuboid, nothing else. Can't do that. Okay, so let me redraw it then. Let me redraw this. Okay, so if I were to turn this, let me try and do that. My fingers are too fat. Let me try and do that again. If I were to turn this slightly, let me make it be bigger then. Okay, let's try and turn it again. Not working. Okay, let's turn it this way then. Right, when you turn it slightly, okay, the vertical line, the line of action of the force, okay, is easily within the base, right? It's easily within this base, and it will go back, it will turn back. There will be a clockwise movement causing it to turn back to its original position. Okay, so when you place it on the side with the larger area, it will be more stable, and you would have to turn a much larger angle before it will topple. All right, so it will turn a much larger angle before it will topple. Okay, so basically I'm just drawing this same diagram because I couldn't turn it the other way. So basically the point is that stability depends on two things: the base area and the position of the center of gravity. The lower the position of the center of gravity, the more stable it is. So if you had, for example, if you were to have an object like the Bunsen burner, for example, right, or something that's shaped like that, okay, when you have an object like this, the CG will be low, okay, especially if the base is made of a material that's denser. Then you have a lower center of gravity, right? And it is very difficult to tilt this object, all right? It's difficult to tilt this object to such an angle that it will topple. You would have to tilt it significantly, all right? If you just tilt it even like 45 degrees, the line of the center of gravity, the line through the center of gravity will still be, the vertical line through the center of gravity will still be within the base, all right, easily, okay, within the base. So it will have anti-clockwise moments causing it to turn back to its original position. So the lower the CG, the more difficult it is for the line of center of gravity to go beyond the base and topple. So the lower the CG, the more stable it is. So you can see that example from, say, for example, not just the Bunsen burner, but even sports cars, right? If you look at a Formula One car, it is very low. Okay, the center of gravity will be low so that it will not flip over so easily, right? So one example over here. Okay, a boy is standing with his right foot and right shoulder touching a wall, and his center of gravity is at the navel, right? Or whatever you want to call it, belly button. And he's right now in a stable equilibrium, meaning that he's not going to topple at this point. But what will happen if he raises his left foot off the ground? Okay, so when he raises his left foot off the ground, okay, let me get my red pen out. Okay, let's just take, for example, okay, I'm not cutting off his foot. I'm just asking him to raise his foot. So let's say he raises his foot, right, such that his left foot is now off the ground, right? The only point of contact with the ground is his right foot here, okay? So the vertical line through his center of gravity, the line of action of the weight is now outside of the base, okay? And that causes a clockwise moment, okay, causing him to topple. All right, so this is, you can try this yourself. It's very difficult for you to maintain this position if you raise the foot that is on this side. Okay, so the answer for this question would be that the vertical line through the center of gravity will fall outside the base, okay, the base, when he raises his left foot. And there will be a clockwise movement about his right foot, which will cause him to turn clockwise and topple.